Hi, this is Xavier Cortada, and welcome to another Miami Corona Project conversation. Today, I'm honored to have with me my friend from law school days, Carlos Martinez, who just got reelected unopposed to another term as our public defender, the 11th Judicial Circuit Public Defender here in Miami-Dade County, an office that he manages with 400 employees and handling 70,000 cases a year. I remember his first election. I was so very proud of him. That was back in 2008. And since then, he has represented thousands of clients. Before that, he was working as administrator within that office for 12 years. And through his tenure, he helped lead a successful effort to ban shackling of children in juvenile courtrooms. And he's instituted the Redemption Project back in '98 to help former clients, returning citizens, with the sealing, expungement, and rights restorations. And recently, he was instrumental in the design and implementation of the streamlined court review process for Amendment 4 in Miami-Dade. If you scroll down, you can read the rest of his bio under this video. Carlos, I am so honored to have you join us today. And any society is as strong as the weakest of its citizens. And what you do every day, and what those uh, so dedicated employees, I know so many of them personally, do every day in your office to make sure that our constitutional rights are protected. And by our, I include myself, to ensure that our democracy and our society is protected, to ensure that we have a system of justice where the rule of law and where people's rights are protected, is something that rests on your shoulder. And I'm so happy that since you put your hat in the ring and ran every single time you run, the citizens of this county have looked to you to lead. And we're looking to you and your leadership now during these very challenging times. With a pandemic, your office is about making sure that your clients are protected. And of course, we don't have jury trials. Our courts are sort of closed. We have a virtual system right now. And I just wanted to talk to you through how the public defender and his employees are working through the pandemic. But before I do that, I just want to talk about you, the public defender. How are you as a person, as a member of this community? How has this pandemic impacted you, and how do you see yourself in the context of society as an individual, as Carlos Martinez?
I think the biggest impact, particularly coming from someone who's an elected official, who's accustomed to interacting with a lot of people on a regular basis, it's like taking candy from a baby, that the baby's going to cry.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, I feel deprived of the contact, even though we have been doing digital meetings, all the way back. We started doing our digital meetings in the office on March 7th. And we have been doing, we stopped meeting one-on-one on March 7th because, we kept reading everything that was going on, particularly in Seattle. My connection to Seattle. I practiced just north of Seattle for about a year, so I've been in touch with the folks out there. And it was very serious what was going on. So we took early steps to try to avoid the physical contact within the office.
Carlos,
So,
I wasn't aware of that. I remember our superintendents ringing the alarm on March 13th, and I was so impressed by that. I mean, Miami-Dade College had said it was going to close on that Friday. The superintendent took to the microphones, and by Monday, schools were closed. But I had no idea that you had closed your office a few days before that. So you may
well,
have
not
been.
exactly close the office. What I had done is I directed all my attorneys and all staff that whatever one-on-one meetings we were having,
With your
like
clients.
management meetings,
Oh,
supervisory meetings, they needed to be done online. They needed to be done on Teams.
okay.
So that way we could practice the social distancing. I also, as soon as we heard the superintendent say that they were going to close, frankly, we were waiting for the Florida Supreme Court to make the announcement because we have been pushing for that announcement. So as soon as the superintendent said it, I immediately started putting my office on a path to telework. So on that Sunday, we contacted 60 employees and told them, you're not coming in tomorrow.
Mhm.
You need to go by the office today, pick up your equipment, and work from home. And what we ended up doing is just having waves of people leaving the office. So by the time the Wednesday came around, we had more than 70% of our office empty.
Wow.
So early on, we started pushing to make sure we got people out. And of course, it helped once the court said that they were not going to have any court hearings for people who are out of custody. That made it a lot easier. And it also ratified my decision on Sunday before anybody else had done it. It ratified my decision, so I didn't feel like I was an outlier that Monday and that Tuesday, the 16th and the 17th, where everybody was like, what do you mean you closed your office? But we did. We closed it to people from the public. We shut it down on the 16th. Nobody could come into the office other than employees.
Well, thanks for your leadership on that, Carlos. It's that
Yeah.
kind of leadership, as you know, taken at that level of government across that really is in what many ways makes our daily count. 5 of our neighbors died yesterday, according to the health department.
Yeah.
A couple of dozen the 2 nights before. So those numbers are, in all candor, dramatically lower than what I was visualizing when, I mean, it's too many. 480
Right.
some dead is too many, and those are the ones accounted for. But to me, those numbers at this point are lower than expected. I am afraid of what will happen once we start relaxing our vigilance, and I think that that's the next chapter with us. Some of that may be happening now in conversations about courts opening or parks opening, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about where you are with that, where the
Yeah. So, so you had started out asking me,
right.
personally how I've been impacted. Um, personally, one of our clients died in the jail.
Oh no.
Right now, they're investigating to see whether it was COVID-19 related. It's a client that had pre-existing conditions, very serious pre-existing conditions. And I also had the brother of a friend of mine, Roy Barquette, Roy,
I know Roy well, sure.
and his brother, Dr. Glenn Barquette, passed away on May 2nd from complications due to COVID-19. So,
I'm
so
so
on a
sorry.
personal level, on May 2nd happened to be the same day that that client died. So on May 2nd, there were 2 reported deaths in Miami-Dade County, and it was quite shocking that I knew both of the people on the same day. So on a personal level, you can't help but have that impact you and realize how serious the situation is. The other thing that impacts,
Carlos, let me
yeah,
please interrupt you because this is so meaningful to me. Every day since the pandemic, since Israel Carrera died on March 26th, I've been keeping this diary where every day I literally make notes of the people, and the people who died on May 2nd for the first time in my diary. Instead of putting them as numbers, um, well, actually, I started on May 1st. I put them as flowers. And the problem with getting reports is that I don't know who those individuals are because
right,
the health department doesn't release numbers. And other than the third person who perished, which was the nurse who died, um, her name was Buendia, Araceli Buendia, who died on March 28th. And the person who died the first time, I did not know who any of these numbers were. And today,
wow,
on May 3rd, I talked about the 2 people who had died the day before.
that's it.
And I know Roy Barquette really well. I also knew his brother, who also died many years ago, Xavier. And the other person is your client. and thank you for helping bring that. Two of our neighbors have died due to COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. May they rest in peace. Now I can put names to those people. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, this affects us personally, Carlos. I hear you.
and you know, since the beginning, the first week in March, when I knew that this was getting really serious, I pushed my attorneys, and I actually pushed the courts to start putting on motions on calendar to get people alternative release, release on overcognizance, and other things. So the other people that are really directly impacted is the attorneys in my office, because these clients, and they continue to call. You know, these clients are in custody. We've gotten, I think it's over 700 of them released. So the jail population right now is the lowest jail population we have ever had. It's close to 3,200 people in custody. To give you an idea, when I started with the office as an intern, it was 9,500. And the reason that I remember 9,500 is my first assignment was to be the jail project coordinator, which involved also keeping track of how many people were in custody and reporting it to Professor Wills at UM, because Professor Wills was the one that was the monitor on the federal lawsuit of overcrowding. So to go from
9,500 in
1988.
Oh my God.
That was 1988, 9,500 to now having 3,200. Now, earlier this year, we started out with about 4,000 in custody. So, so there've been a lot of people released, and we've maintained it pretty low. But imagine, if you will, the personal impact on lawyers who are receiving the calls from the clients, and many of them, we have 2,000 clients still in custody. Many of those clients cannot be released for legal reasons. They either have non-bondable offenses, they have no bond on their cases because they have violations of probation, or they picked up new charges while they're already pending charges, or they have particular designations under Florida law as people who cannot be released because they're considered to have a violent felony of special concern, which keeps a lot of people in, even in non-violent offenses. So there are a lot of people that cannot be released. And imagine the impact on the attorneys who are hearing those phone calls every day from clients telling them how terrible it is inside, also what kinds of things they want to do on the outside, all sorts of things that you would normally not connect to your clients on a very human level.
Sure.
Because even though if you interview a client, you work on the case, it's not a daily deluge of phone calls expressing the fear and the real fear that they have being in custody. So my attorneys, you know, we have set it up. Not only do we have the employee assistance program that regularly works, but we also had a mental health session with them that we've done, and we're planning to have another one, not just for attorneys, but for support staff as well. The other thing that we've done is where we normally tell the attorneys, attend your trainings. It's important that you get your trainings. I have told them, if you get a call from a client while you're in a training, drop your training.
Right.
Talk to that individual. And normally we try to dissuade our clients from calling constantly because you can't get the work done. But the reality is right now, this is the work. The work is actually talking to a human being on the other side and trying to give them some hope and trying just to keep them have just human contact, so that they know that their lawyer is on their side, their lawyer's trying, and also being truthful to the client. Look, we can't get you out because you have this type of charge, that type of charge, but it's engaging the clients in a way that you normally don't engage a client like that. So that has had a big impact on the attorneys themselves and the rest of the employees as
So
well.
there's an incredible therapeutic component that clearly you're bringing, something you would do every day. Are there other barriers clearly that the situation presents insofar as your clients having to wait longer because there are no jury trials, you're not being able to get records because a lot of offices are closed? Are there these impediments that exacerbate this problem now? The fact that your clients can't meet face to face with an attorney, there's a lot of interpersonal trust building that happens in those face to face things. So in a world where the clients don't get to see families in visitations, even by video, which is, like, I'm assuming, the way they are now. And
That's actually, video was announced that it's starting.
oh, it's okay.
Video visitation for our clients with family members, that is starting up. Corrections just issued a news release earlier today.
Oh,
Our
good.
connection with clients is
Right.
video. I mean, they can also call us
Right.
whenever they want. But when we had the budget crisis back in 2008, 2009, one of the first things I did when I became the elected was to purchase video equipment and put it in all the jail cells. So the video equipment at the jail and through our office is a direct, secure connection in a secure room for attorneys to be talking to the clients. So they do have a video connection. And 3 weeks ago, the county gave us finally permission so that our attorneys can actually telework and connect from their house
Yeah.
to the client. Before that, you had to be in our office to use the direct connection. So now they can do it also teleworking. So that is good. And the family visitation is starting back up, which that's a good sign.
That's heartening. So are there limitations that this pandemic has brought or exacerbated for the representation, their ability to be represented by counsel? Have there been barriers to you?
Yeah. So the biggest barrier right now is not really documents. We are getting the documents regularly from the state attorney's office, and we're getting video. The only time that we're having an issue now is if the video files are so big that they have to burn them onto a DVD. Those have been problematic to try to get. But we're working that out with the state attorney's office. But I think the biggest challenge we have right now is that the speedy trial rule, and as you know, there's a speedy trial rule that essentially says a trial has to be held, particularly on felony cases, within 175 days, and which is 6 months. The problem is that rule has been told right now. So the remedies that you would normally have, that if they did not try your case by that period of time, you filed a notice of expiration, and then they had 15 days essentially to try the case, you have no remedy. So right now, everybody is just waiting. 2,000 people just waiting. And I'm talking about my clients. There's an additional 1,200 that are private attorney clients, but for us, it's 2,000. But those 2,000, their cases are essentially frozen in time until the courts open back up so that we can have trials. Just last week, we opened up so that we're taking virtual depositions of police officers. So that work that actually came to a stop for a number of weeks. That kicked up again last week, and we expect the non-law enforcement, all the civilians, hopefully within 30 days, we will start doing their virtual deposition. So we've had to go completely virtual, pretty much on everything. So I have about 300 employees who are completely virtual. Actually, update 315 employees who are teleworking, including my call center. My call center just this week is now virtual, so everybody's working from home, which actually makes it better in terms of social and the physical distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they're not having to come into the office. They're not walking through the courthouse. So it's actually pretty good. But the biggest hurdle is the fact that we don't have any jury trials, and also for the people who are out of custody, we're just contacting them. Their cases are being set off to July, and we don't really know if their cases are going to take place in July, if they're court hearings. So everyone is trying to adapt to this. And the problem with those cases is, somebody's out of custody. It doesn't mean that they're out of jeopardy, because, they have the case hanging over their head. So, with an employer or other sorts of issues, it can get in the way.
Yeah, I kind of want to bring that compassion to the table. Too often, I hope our society is changing and we're becoming a little bit more compassionate and understanding. But there's a presumption of innocence here, right? These are your clients. We presume, we as a society presume that these individuals are not guilty, and some of them have to be in custody, right, as until they await their trial, with the presumption that they are innocent people. There is at least, I just want to focus on one human being. There is at least one, many, many, many more. But there is one person that you can see in the eye who is sitting in custody right now, who is suffering as a mother may be dying, or a grandfather may be dying and have no ability, an innocent person. Not
Right.
that people who committed a crime shouldn't have compassion, but let's just focus on the innocent individual who is sitting there, who is locked and frozen in place while their children and their families, their income, their world is in disarray. And right now, they are suffering double. And depending on how good we are at protecting the population in custody, could wind up getting sick. So someone could literally, in the extreme case, contract a disease, face death, and not be around as other things collapse around their world when they were innocent in the first place. Not that we want that for clearly those, but that they have no business being there, and a court could not resolve that there was innocence and that person shouldn't be there. And that to me breaks my heart. And I know that you and your team are working so hard for them and for all the others whose lives are frozen and postponed. So I thank you for that. And of course, these clients of yours are indigent. That's the whole point. These are individuals
Correct.
who cannot afford to deal with, like, I just had Instacart deliver my groceries for me. This could be a head of household who has children that they would be the provider for. And how are those? So to me, I just want us in our society, in our community, to understand that moments like this, I think, exacerbate the inequities and show the problems. And for those who are guilty too, the family, I mean, you're gonna find out through our courts whether they are or not. But those are individuals who now, who have families, and as part of society, I started out introducing you that we are as strong as the weakest among us. And I'm just wondering, as our public defender, who's going to be thanked to the people of Miami-Dade County, leading us and bringing justice to our community for the next 4 years and beyond, there are going to be other pandemics, Carlos. There are going to be other crises. I mean, climate change alone is going to expose this class and economic divide. And I'm just wondering, you as a public defender, you as someone who's striving to bring justice to our community, how do you see this pandemic showing us some lessons about how unprepared we were and how we begin to prepare now towards the future? Like, what do you recommend? What do you see? What do you suggest that we look at towards the future based on what is happening us today?
So there are a lot of lessons learned already. Part of what I've been doing with my attorneys for the last, oh my God, it's 8 weeks now. You know, wow. So for the past 8 weeks, we have been looking at all sorts of data, trying to get clients out, and particularly prioritizing the ones that are medically vulnerable, either because of pre-existing conditions or due to age. So I have been engaged with my attorneys in a way that I normally do not engage with the attorneys. One, because of the nature of my job is both typically administrative, it's also political, and I have to be out in the community. So there isn't that much time for me to engage attorneys one-on-one and actually look at cases and look what's going on. So to me, it's been really a blessing to be able to have looked at so many cases. I've looked at over 2,000 cases in the last 8 weeks. And when I say I've looked
Wow.
to see at what work we've done, what work we're doing, what work we need to do to get somebody out, and all sorts of issues. And what strikes me is that we have all known the economic disparities, the racial disparities.
Mm-hmm.
We have known those forever, but nothing has crystallized it to the extent that this crisis has done. And what I mean by that is, for example, in the domestic violence arena, unlike all the other courts, in domestic violence, by the way, I have 800 cases.
My God.
That's it. In comparison to 14,000 cases that I have open. Domestic violence is only 800. Yet 100 of those 800 are in custody. So it's a disproportionate number. And when I've looked at it, what has happened in our courts is that the presumption of guilt is the strongest in the domestic violence arena. It's even stronger than in felonies. What I mean by that is this. If somebody gets arrested, the judge will normally put a bond amount. And whether the person can afford the amount, not afford the amount, whether we can get him out on pretrial services, on house arrest with an electronic monitor, that can all be argued, can be negotiated with the prosecutor. In the domestic violence arena, the judges routinely give a bond plus house arrest with a GPS. So what happens? We can get him out on house arrest, but who can afford $10,000? And who has equity in their home? If they qualify for the public defender, that means that they're making less than $25,000 a year as one individual. But unfortunately, what's happened is it's become the standard in that court to place a bond with house arrest and GPS. So who can get out? Anybody with money. So if you have money, fine, the presumption of innocence works for you. But for those who cannot, they have the presumption of guilt. And I've been having this conversation, but it needs to be a very serious conversation, because when you're using money in that way, what you are saying is that you are trying to control the behavior of people who cannot afford to bond out. But if somebody can pay for it, we don't care what your behavior is. It's okay, go ahead, pay it. You're on GPS, house arrest, and that's fine. So we really need to look at this and change how we do business. Because to me, it makes no sense that you are doing house arrest plus bond.
So how do these conversations become policy? How do these conversations become new ways of thinking? I mean, the same issue of the equity divide I see with photographs of people in buses versus people who can get in their own cars. That divide I see with people who have to work because they don't have the luxury of staying at home, which of course is a public health issue in and of itself.
Right.
And but they are essential, and they need to staff our groceries. I see such inequities that manifest themselves today, and I'm just wondering in future years when there are pandemics, Carlos, that because of climate change are going to be stronger, more contagious, and more fatal. Because that's what happens when you destroy forests, when animals interact with human beings,
Right.
and we have the kind of migration. And we have the kind of climate change that warms our planet and brings the vectors of disease into places where they weren't before. So this will repeat itself time and time again. And time again, we'll have prison populations that may be infected. Time and time again, we are people who can't afford to shelter in place because they have to eat. They have to be outside of their shelter. There are time and time again where people can't social distance because they have 3-4 families living in a home. And when even that home was a claustrophobic or dangerous place before the pandemic, and it just became so. As these things happen, how do these different occurrences that make our world a more unjust one get corrected so that we can prepare for that in the future? I know you have been clearly. I started by reading your resume, and folks who just scroll down and read the rest of it. You've been a leader at the ABA level, at your national conference level within our state, in trying to bring justice and to advocate for it. I'm just wondering, you as a public defender now, how do you, as this pandemic moves through the county, make sure that these voices get amplified? And importantly, once we're beyond this pandemic, what can you do to begin correcting the structural problems that we have within Miami-Dade County, the state of Florida, and beyond?
Well, to start off with, we need to bring forward the data.
Yes.
We need to, because frankly, had I not been looking at these cases at a really high level, because I mean, when you look at 2,000 individuals who are in custody, you essentially have a name, you have a charge, you have a date of birth, you have the judge, you have what court. So even at a global of who's in custody, when I did my first filtering in Excel, the domestic violence thing just jumped out at me just as a way of percentage. So part of it is there's very little awareness of what is happening more globally. And globally, I mean globally within the court system, not
Right.
globally in the big sense. But there's no awareness of what's going on because everybody has their own silos. You have the
Right.
domestic violence court, which is separate from the misdemeanor court, even though they are misdemeanors. It was created as a specialty court. So what has happened? Those cases are treated, the individuals who are innocent until proven guilty are treated worse than people who are charged with felonies. I'm not saying that we need to charge the people with felonies to treat them worse. I'm just saying we've lost perspective when you're looking at these things. I understand the idea of protecting individuals, right? So stay away orders or other things that you can put into place. But to me, you have to look at the data and you have to expose the data And you have to have the discussions at a higher level, because what happens a lot of times is you'll have the anecdote. You'll have the anecdote when people were getting released because of COVID-19 from the jails. What anecdote did we get? We got one from the I-4 corridor of an individual who had no prior for violence, but when they were released on this, they ended up getting arrested for killing somebody. So that anecdote becomes, okay, we don't let anybody out.
Sure.
Right?
That's.
But thank God that did not happen with that. But my feeling is, at looking at all this data, is we must have those conversations. We got to figure out the number of people that we have in jail is too high. There are people in there right now, and the only reason they're in custody is because the legislature passed a law that said, if you had such and such type of charge in the last year since you were released, either from probation or from jail, that means that if you pick up a new charge, you are not releasable.
Yeah.
Even though it is, you stole toilet paper when there used to be toilet paper to steal. Right? So some of these things are really so much more clear now that we have had this situation. We know how even though the jail is at 70% of capacity, to me, it's too many people.
Yeah.
Particularly a lot of those cases, if the focus is making sure the person shows up in court, most of my clients who can't be released have somebody they can be released to safely, and that they can ensure the person comes back. But that's not how the system works.
Any anecdotal or data about clients that have been arrested during COVID? Is there anything that you're seeing that is different, something unusual about the occurrences of what's happened with your clients?
Yes.
Since what
Yeah.
would you say?
The stupid curfew arrest. And by the way, I've used that language with police chief.
Okay.
So I'm not saying anything on here that I haven't said to a police chief as to what are your officers doing. The fact that they're arresting people, not only that, in one particular city, they're arresting people who had no criminal charge other than this freaking curfew violation.
Yeah, my God.
Which to me is outrageous.
Yeah.
For them to just willy-nilly, all right, we're going to arrest you. And thankfully, there've only been like 2 or 3 police departments that are doing that. And through our own personal intervention, I ended up calling one of the chiefs myself. The state attorney called one of the chiefs herself.
Well,
just so that that's like, okay, what are you people doing? We're trying to keep the population down. And all of a sudden, you're effectuating curfew arrest. So that's part of the challenge that we've seen. I haven't even looked at my emails this afternoon because I've been on Zoom call after Zoom call. So I have no idea if I have any curfew arrests from yesterday, but I'll check it out. One of the good things that I have to tell you about this too, because I told you one of them is that I've been able to get a global view because I don't have the normal things that keep me busy, in terms of going to events, meeting with other folks, and doing all sorts of things like that. And there's been a tremendous amount of collaboration with the state attorney in terms of looking at global issues where we will come to an agreement and then our respective areas will work out some issues. So we're looking at things very differently than we would on a normal basis. And I don't think we're going back to the way it was. I think this has been a good positive change between the courts, Department of Corrections, state attorney, public defender, and the clerks. We're operating more like a system now than we've ever have. and it's on a regular basis. We meet once a week to say, okay, what do we accomplish? You know, since last week, what's coming up? How are we going to open up the courts? What safety measures are we going to have? So those kinds of things are really very positive. And my hope and expectation is that we will continue to do more of that, and even bring police departments in regarding what types of arrests they're making. Now, arrests have gone way down. On any given day now, they're only arresting 70 people. It used to be between 170 and 250.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's dramatic, sure.
So that has had an impact. Now that's the good news, in the sense that there are a lot of these low-level arrests that are no longer happening. The bad news is that the arrests that are happening are really serious cases.
I see.
So the workload is becoming more complex, because you used to be able to mix it up. You had some cases that are, you don't have to spend that much time on them. Now what I'm seeing, what's coming in, it's cases that are pretty heavy.
I see.
So, I'm sure we will adapt to that. But even that, I think, has been a good change in being able to see and determine what's really important. Because we're all assessing our own personal lives right now. It's what's really important to make life meaningful. Mm-hmm. I think that's happening also in police behavior. In terms of police arrests, in terms of departments. So, even on an organizational level, I think if people are conscious of it, I think we can have long-term changes that will reflect that reality, and hopefully will equalize some of the disparities that we have in the system.
Well, Carlos, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for sharing this wisdom and this perspective, from your position of leadership. I'm happy to see some silver linings in there about collaborations, and about looking at data, and about your engagement with your public defenders on this. I also appreciate you sharing that human condition, what's happening to your clients, but also personally, to those lawyers who've dedicated their lives to public service, and to making sure that those in our society who are most vulnerable are protected, and that those constitutional rights are alive for us because they are alive in them. So I thank you for your lifelong commitment, since I knew you as a student leader at the University of Law School. Thank you for your lifelong commitment to making our world, and especially our society here in Miami-Dade County, better. And I look forward to speaking with you a little bit more to see how we move through this pandemic. Thank you so much.
And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Carlos. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.